Hello, everyone, and welcome. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes to join. And while we're waiting, I'd love to, get to know where everyone's coming from. And it's football season, so definitely would love to know who you're rooting for this year. Um, my name's Samantha. I'm a customer success manager here with Recognize, and I am located in colorful Colorado here in Denver. And I'm all about the Packers. So go Pack Go, originally from Wisconsin.
Yeah, also, I'd love to see what industries people are in. If you want to share what industry you're in, I can use those as examples in the webinar.
Oh, got some California joining, 49ers. All right. Tennessee joining us today. Oh, Brittany, Cowboys. Oh, no.
Well, about the time last year, I was in Tennessee a little bit later in the season, and God, the foliage in the fall in Tennessee was so beautiful. I'd love to be back there for the fall season.
Nova Scotia. Okay. That's a new one I saw.
Kathleen couldn't care less about football. I'm actually with you, Kathleen. I just had to say go Cowboys for my husband, but really, had to really follow too much.
I love industries. I've got pest control, beverage, alcohol, and cannabis. There you go. What a changing industry that's been, right? From being illegal to now a billion-dollar industry.
Everybody's from all over.
Some familiar faces too. Hey, Grace from DC. Hey, Patrice.
Yeah.
Love seeing some familiar names in here.
Tuna and shrimp industry from Ecuador. All right, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for sharing those fun facts. And I think we're about 3 minutes here, so we'll go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be diving into internal communications in 2025 and why recognition is a game changer. How many of you have ever sent an update that you thought was extremely important and then no one realizes you sent it or reads it? Definitely you are not alone. That's one of the main challenges, with internal comms today. It's not about sending more messages, it's about making them matter. And recognition, is definitely that missing ingredient. So it turns updates into moments people actually care about. So today I'm excited to be joined by Alex Grandy and Brittany Espinoza, who are going to be sharing practical frameworks, how to embed recognition into everyday tools like Teams and Slack, and how to prove the impact to leadership. Quick intros here. So Alex Grandy is the CEO and founder of Recognize. He's been leading Recognize for the past 10 years, helping companies bring recognition into everyday work and transform culture at scale. He's worked with hundreds of teams, published research on social cognition, and is truly passionate about the power of positive reinforcement. And I'm going to go ahead, welcome Alex. And then we have Brittany Espinoza, who is our head of customer success here at Recognize. She has a passion for helping teams achieve more through thoughtful and impactful employee recognition programs. And Brittany combines deep expertise with a genuine desire to see people thrive, whether it's designing engagement campaigns, guiding organizations through integrations, or coaching leaders on best practices. She brings clarity, energy, and practical insights into everyday conversation. So welcome, Brittany and Alex. Thanks for joining us today. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off with a quick poll. Yeah, awesome. So let's kick things off with a quick poll here. We would love to know, when you send out internal comms, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing? Getting employees to actually read them, cutting through all the noise and channels, getting employees to take action after reading, or making updates that feel relevant and engaging. So we'll give everybody a minute to answer here.
I think this would be a tough one to choose.
We should have had an all the above option.
Yeah.
Or feel free to drop in the chat, if it is all of the above. We'll
Or
also have a
something
Q&A
different.
at the end of the webinar here, so feel. All right. I was thinking getting employees to actually read them was going to be number one.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think just kind of sharing a personal note, when you text somebody, right? And like, what's worse, seeing that it's been read and no response, or seeing it just unread?
All right, well, I appreciate everybody's participation in that. So with that said, let's get started. We're going to definitely acknowledge the reality, right? Internal communications are tougher than ever, and messages are flying in from emails, Slack, intranets, all sorts of platforms here, and employees are tuning them out. So before we dive into solutions, let's talk about why so many updates don't stick. So Alex, I would love to get to know, a lot of companies say their updates aren't seen and are being seen but not acted on, right? Like you said, being read but no engagement. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think companies need to think more about the 3 steps here: understand, diagnose, and fix. And so often we jump to wanting to fix things. I think this is how it is in their personal lives. Someone comes to us saying, "Oh, I've had a tough day," you immediately try to fix it for them, right? And companies will try to they'll understand what the problem is, but then they'll jump to solutions, right? Without diagnosing and understanding really what's really going on behind the scenes, right? Why is it that's happening? And I think we have to ask ourselves, what kind of company are we? Like in a seafood industry compared to a cybersecurity business, you're going to have different types of management depending on the kind of company you are. So there's 3 different types of management. There's management of tasks, management of objectives, and management of values, right? So a company that uses management of tasks, that's when things maybe are more stable. You're trying to maintain production. So I think that's maybe more in line with, like, for instance, one of our customers, they fix lighting in parking lots, or another one of our customers has people in the field fixing and installing commercial refrigerators. That's a bit more on the management of tasks, right? Management of objective is a type of company where you are, things are possibly changing, you're trying to optimize results, maybe more on the seafood industry, right? You have an objective to reach a quota on shrimp, right? Whereas if you're a cybersecurity company, maybe thinking more about the management of values, right? And that's when things are dynamic and changing. There's a video game company in Europe where they trust their employees to the point where if the team says this game is not going to be profitable, the leadership doesn't have to be involved in that decision, right? And so I just think a lot of times that these updates that are being put out there and they're not acted on are really just coming back down to the core operating system in which your company is utilizing, right? There's a lot of differences between different generations as well on how they want to be receiving information. Millennials like myself and Gen Z, we're looking for more collaboration. How often have you received instructions on Slack or Teams and it wasn't written down in your wiki and you're just dictated top down to do this? Why would you be internalizing that when you're not part of that decision making? You're not using your own cognitive resources to figure out a solution with you, right? So these are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself when seeing why people are not acting on things. Oftentimes, managers are so important. Managers need to have that self-awareness, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, this person didn't do it, I'm mad at them for not doing it," maybe look at yourself and see, again, did you just send that instructions on Slack on a Friday? Or did you collaborate with that person and put it in a wiki that's a living document.
Awesome. Those are great points, Alex. Thank you for sharing that. I'd also like to get Brittany's input as well regarding some of these, internal communication struggles. When we talk to HR and comms leaders, what have you seen that they're struggling with the most right now?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. And I think there's probably two biggest struggles. And the first one is definitely in line with what our poll indicated, which is the visibility piece. People aren't seeing the communication in the way that we want them to. So, we're fortunate to work in a time where we have a lot of different platforms, and in a lot of cases that's super beneficial to our businesses because as Alex mentioned, you have maybe different generations that receive communication differently, but we also have different groups of employees, right? So you may have frontline workers who are going to see text messages or in-app announcements better, whereas maybe your office employees or your corporate staff is going to be looking at things like Teams or Slack or things like that. So I think it's really great to have all of these avenues to reach our entire workforce. But what can happen, and what I hear a lot of, is that a lot of times those different tools and channels are competing for attention. And so we really have to kind of make an intentional effort to make sure that the communication that we're sending out is hitting all of our channels, but in a very consistent way. We don't want employees to not know where to look for communication, or have like inconsistencies in where we're posting communication, so they don't know like where to pay attention. So so I think it's a lot about making sure that we are reaching everybody in a way that makes the most sense for them, whether that be their demographic or just the type of work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, but it has to be super consistent. And I think a lot of times we historically have depended on like a cascading of information, and there's always been challenges with that because it's like a game of telephone, right? I mean, if we've got leadership sharing the information with the managers, and then that kind of cascading down, things can be lost in translation. So really being able to have consistent communication to all areas of the business is going to really help employees know where to look and make sure that they're not missing anything. And then the other piece is the action piece, right? So even when they do see the communication, oftentimes employees they read it, they see it, but then they kind of walk away thinking, okay, now what? As a frontline worker or whatever my role is, how do I personally contribute to this goal or this initiative? So there's a struggle with kind of lack of clarity around what the action steps are. And even when we are really good in our communication about laying out action steps, there has to also be follow-up, right? So especially when there's a lot of communication happening, we don't want to read something at the beginning of the month and say, oh, here's what I'm expected to do, and then never hear anything else. And that's where, as we'll kind of discuss throughout today's session, where recognition can really kind of help with that follow-up piece and really drive home like what somebody's role is and what actions they can be taking to contribute to the goal or the initiative, and really kind of continue to reinforce that message so that things don't kind of fall flat. We don't have our updates fading or initiatives stalling because employees don't feel like they're personally connected, and just overall, so that communication leaders don't feel like they're essentially shouting into a void.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely love both those points you and Alex made. Alex collaborating and communicating to connect, to make real impact. And then Brittany, definitely, it's not a one size fits all, right? We really have to think about who we're reaching, and making sure it's not conflicting priorities when it comes especially to those different generations, and having a lot of frontline workers, and we do have to take that into consideration. Now that we've discussed some of the challenges that we're seeing, let's talk about that missing ingredient. And one thing we found is that recognition can definitely be a powerful tool for cutting through that noise. When people feel celebrated, they also pay closer attention to messages tied to those moments. So, Alex, when we're talking about recognition, it's usually thought of as an HR function. How can it actually help support internal communication as well?
Yeah, traditionally it's the PR team that does internal comms, but what we're seeing is a trend towards HR being more involved in internal communications. Personally, I'd love to see more collaboration between the two for more effective internal comms. But going back to what I said before around management tasks, objectives, and values, recognition makes it democratic, right? Instead of a manager having to, at that performance review, try to figure out the last quarter if you've been hitting your objectives or showing values, they can look at something like Recognize, our tool, to see what are other people saying about them, what are the values and objectives and tasks they're hitting that you're trying to incentivize, and looking at one place. Look, it's 2025. Everything needs to be data at this point, right? If you're doing things in your business haphazardly or ad hoc, you're missing an opportunity to collect data and analyze it. Big data is more important than ever, especially now with Gen AI. If you're not able to capture, if you're not able to analyze the data now, at least in the future, you'll be able to, because you can historically go back. That's why it's so important to not have recognition of values or objectives being just haphazard or on the spot, but instead through a tool like Recognize, so it can be collected. Really the internal communicator, their goal is to create an informed, engaged, connected workforce, right? That should be the driver behind all things internal communication. And one of the most important things for that is listening. Even on day one of hiring somebody, asking, what is your brilliance, right? So if you are coming into the company, where do you want to go in the future? And immediately have that sense that, hey, they care about me, they're listening to me, and into the future as well. Listening is so important. Managers oftentimes become managers because they're really good at certain tasks, but do they have that communication skill? That's where that training of managers is so important. Take advantage of the crowd, right? You have a team of people, right? Let's say you have 30 managers and they each, on average, 5 direct reports, right? That's 150 people you can connect with one small change inside of that, right? So we need to be, and one of the most important things we need to be teaching managers for internal comms is compassion. It sounds lofty, right? But when someone has compassion, how many times have you seen or maybe experienced yourself when a manager is cold and harsh, right? They haven't been taught how to come to the table with compassion and self-awareness. Your recognition program should be tied to these things.
Wow, yeah, that's really, I love that, leading with compassion. Sometimes I think people forget the most simplest things to do, like communicating. So thank you, Alex. That was really, really insightful. Recognition, cutting through the noise.
Yeah. And I think that the things that are coming to my mind are really things for managers, like Alex said, especially in larger organizations, our managers have to be doing these things. So kind of sticking with my 2 main challenges that I hear a lot, recognition, being able to kind of increase visibility is something that I think is overlooked a lot. So for example, if I'm sending out a communication, rather than saying, hey, great news, we hit our production goal. You can talk about the team members or the groups that worked to make that goal happen. So you're really spotlighting those who impacted or made a shift in whatever that initiative or goal is. And that makes the message more personal and relatable. There's this concept that psychologists have called social proof loop. And it basically means that people will pay more attention when they see others being celebrated. And they're also more likely to engage with the surrounding message. And I actually have an example of this. I had a client who was doing a really good job of making sure that their communication was consistent across all their different platforms and communication avenues, and even, making sure that it was visible in their recognition program, but they were still struggling with people actually seeing it. And so they went ahead and made that shift of kind of a recognition first approach in their weekly newsletters, and making sure that they are highlighting the employees that are receiving recognition or completing challenges that directly align with different goals or initiatives that they're communicating. And that was part of every week's newsletter. So they actually saw a pretty immediate increase, about a 30% increase in open rates, because people were now excited to open that newsletter and see if they were mentioned, if their team was mentioned, because that makes that message more personal. And then overall, because they were opening that more and viewing it more, they were definitely seeing the needle move on those goals a lot more as well. So again, just don't overlook the fact that including the recognition piece with the communication is going to make that more relatable to your employees, and they're going to absorb that information a little bit more. And then I think another really huge piece that recognition has with comms is turning the information into action. So it's really, really important if you have an initiative or you have a goal that you want your teams working towards, the recognition that they're receiving should match what those goals and initiatives are. So, in Recognize, that can be creating recognition badges that align with whatever the current initiatives or goals are, and really encouraging managers to shout out and recognize those employees who are taking positive actions towards those goals. And then you can do other things too, like creating different challenges that are going to support those initiatives and goals or nominations, but really trying to take your communication from just an announcement to actionable items. And again, it's going to increase the likelihood that employees will actually act on what's being asked. And it's going to reinforce those messages too. I talked about previously about how even when we as employees know what actions are expected of us when we read the communication, if it's not reinforced through recognition or challenges or whatever else, it can fade and other things start to kind of overshadow it and take priority. So including that piece in your recognition program is really just going to kind of help keep that top of mind, reinforce the behaviors that we're looking for, and just overall you'll see that needle move when people are very clear on what's expected of them, and they're excited to do it because they're getting recognition for it.
Awesome. Yeah, it definitely sounds like keeping that content relevant and to really tying it into the, company values, initiatives can help. And that's awesome. Great success story with your client. I love hearing that. All right. So let's go ahead and kind of pivot from ideas to action. If you're leading internal comms in 2025, you definitely need a clear playbook. Recognition can't just be added on as an afterthought, right? It has to be built into your strategy in a way that feels natural to employees. So if I'm leading IC in 2025, Alex, what playbook should I follow?
Well, I think there's a number of things to consider. One of them being, as I mentioned earlier, is micro adjustments. There's this idea of the foot in the door technique, which is basically small steps to compliance. Don't make huge changes all at once, right? You can often make small adjustments. With our customers that recognize, we often recommend a crawl, walk, run approach to a recognition culture, right? Do something small, test, iterate, improve, add on top of that. I think that's really important rather than just making these huge swaths of changes and then not really knowing what made positive or negative impact. And then there's like some things in the details in that playbook I think are important, like jargon. Put a thumbs up in Zoom here if you're tired of jargon. Jargon has been found recently to reduce employee morale, decrease collaboration. Let's don't use acronyms. Say what you're trying to say. Don't try to sound smart, right? Keep things simple. And kind of reinforcing what I see some thumbs up coming in. To reinforce what Brittany said before, repeat yourself, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. I mean, it's that, I don't know how many times I'll be on a call explaining something, and at the end of the call, I'll be asked, oh, do you have X? It's like, well, I went over that like twice, but I didn't show it. Other times people are visual learners as well, right? So that's why I think powerful things like using like Loom, for instance, videos is so important. Little small micro videos is crucial. And again, the internal comms is the owners of the culture. So you want to, in your playbook, you want to 100% always have managers involved. You can't be the only person pulling the entire company along on something. You need to have stakeholders feel like they have ownership over it so that they are driving it within their teams. And I also want to highlight that what you say internally, it matters. And you want to ask yourself, is what I'm writing internally, would I be okay with it being leaked to the media? Right. For instance, at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, he's notorious for just having what he's saying be leaked. And oftentimes because what he's saying it's sometimes questionable, right? So now he's gone after and fired, leakers. Obviously we want to have a strong team where we feel like we have a sense of belonging and that you're not trying to undermine the organization, right? You're only as strong as your weakest link. At the same time, you want your messaging to be consistent with what you are saying in public as well, I think is important. And again, coming back to, are you doing what you say you believe in? Always trying to think about that is important. I thought it was interesting to read that 84% of millennials care more about that their work is having a positive impact in the world than being recognized for their own work. Yes, we want to be recognized for their own work, but at the same time, tying the work that we're doing in an organization back to a positive impact on the world, right? So those are a few things I wanted to cover.
Love that. And, I actually, talking about your strategy of the, crawl, walk, run, I do that with a lot of my clients, because if they're feeling overwhelmed, then imagine how their employees are going to feel. So definitely rolling those out in phases is very helpful. All right. Brittany, I'd love to know how you can actually weave recognition into daily channels like Teams, Slack, email, or whatever channel companies may be using for their organizations.
Yeah, I was also just reading a question from Heather in the chat, and I think that your question, Sam, will actually have some answers for her as well. She asked, one of the challenges that she implemented a new school of information portal based on feedback from her employees that they were getting too many emails. And now she's getting the opposite feedback where she has people complaining that there's not enough emails. And so she's asking, how can she help drive the portal more and encourage people to utilize it versus the multiple meetings and emails. And I think that you're kind of experiencing the challenge of different employees receiving information or wanting information in different ways. And so, and I think that that's super common, especially in large organizations, again, where you have different parts of the business doing different things on a day-to-day basis. So maybe it's more about communicating in multiple channels, but a very consistent message. But, at the same time, Heather's probably thinking, well, Brittany, I don't have time to send an email and then go post it on my knowledge portal and then go put it in Slack and then put it in Teams. So I think it's really important when you're choosing yeah, for sure. So I think it's important that when choosing a communication method or a recognition program to be able to have your communication cascade to different tools, with one post. So let me add a little example there. I've had many customers who've had the same challenge. And what I a lot of times recommend is choosing where you're going to send that communication from. And in my case, I'm often recommending from their recognition program. And that's because I'll talk a little bit more about how recognition really needs to live in the same channels as your updates. But what I will usually recommend is posting that announcement from your recognition program and integrating your recognition program into your other channels. So at the same time, you can post it to your recognition program. You can also have it post to, your SharePoint or your intranet. You can also have that announcement go, automatically post straight to Teams. You can automatically also have that announcement go to an email inbox and to a text message if you've got heavy frontline, but you only have to do it once. And yeah, to your point, Heather, you are trying to make everybody happy. And so let's put that communication in everywhere that they're asking for it to be, but only as a, the person who's making the post, I only have to do it once, right? So integrating all of your different tools is super important. If you have tools that you're using across your organization and they don't live together, integrate together, you're creating more work for yourself. And to my other point, recognition really needs to live in the same channel as your updates. So recognition is going to amplify your comms. So for example, here's the update and here's who acted on it successfully. Having that approach of combining the recognition with the communication, it's going to, number one, again, increase visibility because you're going to drive people to that communication because recognition increases visibility. People are going to check for recognition. We know that. And two, it's going to drive action because you can see side by side behaviors that support initiatives are being rewarded. So making sure that those two things live together is going to really help the biggest challenges that we see. So yeah, I have so many companies who I think one of my customers that's on here today has been working on integrating their recognition stream into their intranet and different tools that they're using. And that's just really, really powerful. And, I actually read a study too that said integrated recognition systems drive 31% higher adoption of comms tools. So again, just to kind of drive home the points here, make sure that your communication method is integrated into all your different tools so that you can post once and have the same communication hit multiple channels, and then pair recognition with your communication.
Great points, Brittany. And it's true. Change is hard for people, right? And sometimes you just have to meet your employees in spaces where they're already working, and increase that visibility. David, yes, we will be doing a demo of Recognize here very shortly, after we get through our little finish up with the webinar here. So, and I love the quote, Alexander, thank you so much for sharing that. Hopefully we answered your question, Heather, but we can definitely address, if you have more, address that in the Q&A as well. Now that we've kind of covered the why and the how, let's get into content and measurements. Even the best strategy only works if people actually engage with the content and if you can show leadership the results. So Alex, I heard you mention this earlier. Why does short form or micro videos or micro content matter in IC for 2025?
Yeah, I just feel that by having more, bite-sized content, it's easier to consume. I mean, especially with Gen Z, they're coming into a world where, TikTok and Snap and Instagram are all the norm. So, I mean, people's attention spans aren't what they used to be. Again, I mentioned the app Loom. I absolutely love Loom because, it's a little buggy at times, but I do love how I can create little micro videos. I can explain things. I use it all the time with people like my designer. When I get a deck or a design and I need some changes, right? Instead of writing a bunch of bullet points that person has to then match the bullet points to the design, I just make a video, right? Things are so much easier to understand when it's in video form. Also, tone of voice comes across, right? People can misinterpret messages so easily. So I think that's really important. And as I mentioned before, you want to use a wiki. That message that you send on Slack or Teams can be short, but then it links to something bigger, right? And again, as I mentioned before, it's a living document that you can collaborate on. I thought it was interesting to read that 67% of Gen Z wants to receive information via email compared to 45% on an intranet. So I thought that was really surprising to me. So email is not dead internally. It's a great way to be able to communicate things that people can then categorize. Slack or Teams can be very challenging to save later or find the information that was sent before. And it's also a constant stream of information. So being able to have it in the right place, using the right tools in the right ways is so important. So using email, using Slack, using your wiki. I'm always surprised when I talk to people and they just tell me they don't even have a wiki. We use Notion as our wiki. We find it to be incredibly powerful. I chose Notion over other wikis because every file becomes a folder, right? So if you open a document in Notion, I can then make a description of what that means, and then I can add more files inside of that. So I really love that. Yeah, and I can share the after the call, we'll send an email out. I can share the book that I got the stats from. They source all the studies as well. So I'm happy to share the direct source or just the book that I read it from that also then sources it. In that same study, they found that Gen Z, 45% of Gen Z says they want to be listened to via anonymous surveys, right? And that 83% said that they're okay being contacted on a personal phone. You can text them or call them on their phone. Don't call them, nobody answers the phone anymore, but text them. It's amazing. These things are surprising to me. Text, Loom, linking to the wiki. These are all ways that we can use short form content.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And, how do we prove that this is working? So, and what metrics are worth tracking? Brittany, do you have any, would you like to share any insights on that?
Yeah, totally. I think for the visibility piece, obviously the usual comms metrics like open rates, click-throughs, read times, those are all really great metrics to kind of find out if your communication method is visible. But in terms of like the action piece, you can have really awesome open rates and click-throughs, but that doesn't tell you that actions are actually happening, or that people are exhibiting the behaviors that are going to move the needle on those initiatives and goals. And that's where connecting recognition metrics, it can be really helpful. So for example, are recognition spikes tied to the initiatives that you're promoting? Do people act faster on updates when recognition is built into the rollout? And so you can kind of track, let's say I create a badge or a challenge for a particular goal or initiative that we're running, and I see one team or group that is really crushing this initiative and this goal. Can I tie that also to a spike in recognition? The answer is most likely going to be yes. There is actually a study by Gallup that said that recognition leads to 23% faster adoption of new processes. So when you can really tie the managers and the leaders and the team members who are sending recognitions related to the initiatives or completing challenges that are tied to your goals and initiatives, you will see a corresponding increase in adoption and in hitting those targets because of that recognition. And I always have a million customer examples. So I actually have one for this one too. I had a medical company who was implementing a new patient software, and they included recognition badges where they celebrated the employees who were utilizing the new tool. And they also incorporated some challenges where employees could be rewarded and recognized when they complete different key points of using the new software. And they absolutely saw a clear pattern of recognition activity and adoption of the new tool moving in lockstep. So really, really proving that recognition directly increased the success of that initiative. So really the key point being that recognition doesn't just increase message visibility, it's also going to accelerate adoption of your initiatives.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And perhaps for Heather, have you considered, tying in recognition to some of these processes and things like that? Or have you, viewed your click rates, and, if going to Alex's point, maybe you create that micro content and there's a way for you to track that as well and see if that's more successful for your student body. So really great ideas from Alex and Brittany there. Not above bribing people. Awesome. All right. We've talked about strategies, examples, frameworks, measuring metrics. Now, I'd actually like to see how this actually works in practice. Recognition works best when it's woven into the tools people already use every day. So Alex, we would love for you to take a little time here to walk us through a quick demo of Recognize to show everyone how recognition can fit into daily workflows, how we can tie this into, internal communications. So I'll let you go ahead and take over the screen share here.
Yeah, and I'll try to maybe share a couple of things that if you're a recognized customer that are new as well. So Recognize is a platform to communicate those tasks, those objectives, those values, and celebrate when those things are accomplished, including just being able to celebrate anniversaries, work anniversaries, birthdays. So I just want to give a short demo here, not spend too much time with that, but please schedule a call with us. I'm happy to meet with you or meet with other members of our team and we can go through it. But essentially, so Recognize, this is what it looks like in the browser here. And as you can see, we sync with your HRIS to pull in your groups, right? And your locations and your departments. And then you can find and discover recognitions that are happening to create that cross-team collaboration. So maybe you can see a recognition happening in one department and then be able to have comments and emojis and boosting recognition. So this is a gamification platform. So basically you create a set of values in the form of badges, and then they can be sent by anybody or maybe specific individuals like managers or different departments. We love creating programs that are for specific departments, right? So if you're a cybersecurity company, you have a program, you're incentivizing the behaviors and objectives of maybe your IT team versus your client success team, right? And so you can customize and change what these badges and values are. And when you send these recognitions, people then can be highlighted in the Hall of Fame or be in a leaderboard or, again, bribing them, right? So you can actually redeem gift cards or Amazon, or even go and redeem swag or company items. For our existing customers, I do want to mention that in Q4, we're launching live events tickets, so discounted international concerts, sporting, theater, comedy shows. And these are all results of earning points from sending and receiving recognitions, from completing challenges or tasks, right? You can also complete surveys with Recognize, and we can help you create a survey, or you can actually create your own surveys to be able to understand people. Now, we only have so many tabs available in our browser, right? And so many times you can start these recognition programs and they fall flat because they're not inside of Outlook. So we have Recognize in Outlook. We have Recognize inside SharePoint. I can go into Teams and I can click on the Recognize icon on the mobile phone or on the desktop and launch Recognize into Teams. This is exactly as you saw in the browser. So once you learn how to use Recognize in one place, you can use it anywhere. As a manager, you can go in your manager portal. You can get analytics on your direct reports. You can see what your team represents as far as the values or behaviors of your company. Who are the top employees of your team, right? And as a company admin, you can run reports to the entire company. What's the engagement of your recognition program across departments or the entire company or across time periods? If you're utilizing our point system, what are the redemptions that are occurring? What kind of points are being allocated? How do you budget and constrain how much is even spent in the program, right? And you can give additional points to different individuals inside the company, and we can help you manage that budget depending on what you're trying to do. Or just do a non-monetary program and celebrate the wins in just the badging and gamification. So it's really robust in that way. And one kind of another sneak peek I want to show that we're launching this coming quarter, Q4, is a PDF summary or a website summary using AI to summarize these employees, right? So if you're a manager and you're coming up to a performance review, right? Go and download this report that will show how are they tying their behavior, their actions to the values. What's a key recognition they've accomplished? What's a summary of that person, right? And then what are the values of that person that may not be your company values? And then what kind of recognitions are they receiving? Is it from peers? Is it from different departments? Or is it from managers? So this can really empower that performance review. I know as a manager myself, how you come up with that performance review and then you're just kind of like, you go through the form of the questions, but how powerful is it to be able to go and see what's happened in that last quarter or 6 months, depending on how often you do that performance review. So that's just like a sneak peek of what we do. More than happy to, again, do a demo, explain what we do for companies. And yeah, Sam, anything else you want me to cover there?
No, thank you so much. And we dropped the link if you guys would like to book some time with Alex to learn more. And I think this is a great time to go ahead and get into audience Q&A. Can everybody see my screen okay?
I don't think you're sharing anymore.
Oh, shoot. My apologies.
No
there we go.
worries.
Can we see my now?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Oh dear. All right, so we have a few questions from some of our attendees today. One of the questions we had was, how do you handle internal over communication when it comes to R&R? I mean, I'm happy to give my suggestion, or Brittany or Alex, if you want to hop in and answer this one.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about over communication. I think that there's a couple things we need to watch out for. One piece is too much communication in one announcement or one document. We kind of have a max out, right? As we're kind of reading and absorbing information, we're gonna all hit a point where, you know, we can't really absorb anymore. So kind of having more like micro communications where it's a little bit more digestible is really great. Alex talked about earlier, video communication is a lot of times easier to receive than reading through a text document. So really just paying attention to how that communication is being delivered. But the other piece of that is sometimes we do over communicate or give too many goals or initiatives at once, and it's hard for employees to decide where they should focus their time. And I think we've all been guilty of that. I know I've been guilty of that as a leader. You know, we've been guilty of that as an organization. So really working on kind of finding what your North Star for that month is or for that quarter, and having all of your initiatives and goals and communication center around whatever that North Star goal or initiative is. And then that way it's relevant. And again, they know what they're working towards. And then once again, I'll talk about just the reinforcement of it. It can feel like over communication when I am hearing things so much, different things, maybe every week or every month or whatever that is, and then I never really hear it again. It just kind of feels like a lot of things are being thrown at me. Different things are being thrown at me. But if that message that I'm trying to communicate is continuously reinforced by shouting out those who are making progress, or managers and leaders are consistently sending recognitions to their team for making progress towards that initiative, it's going to resonate more with me, and it's not going to feel like over communication.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, someone earlier said that they don't have leadership buy-in. Totally normal. For some reason, leadership doesn't value internal communication as much as they should. I think constantly leadership is always looking at outward. How can we get more customers? How do we add more value to the shareholders? When not realizing that to do that, oftentimes they need to look inwards. One thing I found though, instead of going after leadership, is find those people who have clout in the organization, right? I definitely have seen that in places I worked in before, where it could be someone who's just an account manager or a web developer. They may not even be, but they are socially loved inside the company. Everyone loves that person, right? And you should get them on board, have them help you with the communication, because people will maybe listen to them, right? And so if you, and again, I think that's coming back to micro videos, get that leader, or maybe get the person with clout to get the leader to make a micro video explaining how important it is to send a recognition, or to, stop sending instructions over Teams, right? So looking to people in the organization that may, regardless of job title, who has clout.
Awesome. And I know we kind of touched, or you had touched based on this earlier in the webinar, Alex. One of the questions, are there any strategies you can share when it comes to employees marking those emails as read or archiving them without really actually engaging? Brittany and you both touched base on this during the webinar. Happy definitely to jump in here. So again, it's not just about visibility. Are they seeing it? Are they reading it? It's about, are they acting on it? And so again, that's just where tying in recognizing those who are having the positive behaviors associated with the initiative, creating challenges is not only going to let them know what they should be doing in their roles, but it will also entice them to do it. Where as a human nature, we like challenges, we like to complete things, we like to earn recognition. So when those pieces are tied into the communication, that's when you're going to see action. So you're not going to have people just reading and forgetting in one ear out the other. You're going to actually have them engaging with whatever the communication or initiative is. Awesome. And it looks like we have a couple of questions actually that came in. when we're talking about leadership buy-in, how do we get your leadership on board when they, it seems like they don't care. It's not their priority. It's just thrown to the wayside.
Sorry, I'll jump in again. I think proving ROI really. Number one, if as an organization, if you are rolling out a goal or initiative, there's a reason for it. So your leaders and your managers need to know how it's going to benefit them and their teams. So that's going to help create that buy-in, and then also prove to them what the ROI for them and their team is going to be. Show them what the benefit for their team is, and then also prove to them, if you reinforce these behaviors through recognition, you're going to see a faster adoption, and the adoption of this initiative or this goal or whatever it is going to benefit you in this way. So they don't want to hear all of these initiatives just kind of being like told to them, like, this is what you need to do. They want to know why. They want to know, why is this beneficial to me in my department? How is this going to increase productivity for my team? So really, they want to know the why behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to Brittany's point, I mean, if you have the data there, I mean, especially look at your managers who are very engaged and who aren't, correlate that data and for, retention, productivity, things like that. And maybe you can really see that engagement, those really engaged managers have that higher productivity and higher retention within their teams. All right. And then we had our last question here. How can organizations create fast, transparent feedback loops that give younger staff a voice in decisions while bridging the power dynamics to foster a more open, two-way communication? I mean, just my insight here, real-time channels like digital surveys, suggestion platforms, or collaborative tools really allow employees to share input quickly. And then leaders can reinforce trust by acknowledging that feedback, explaining the decisions, and demonstrating, how input shapes outcomes. So, structured opportunities such as reverse mentoring, inclusive communities, an open Q&A forum, that can actually really help break down that hierarchy and really make that communication truly two-way. So constantly integrating practices into your organization's, flow and rhythm really ensures, feedback just isn't heard. It actually drives action. So that's just my input. If you Alec or Brittany want to share any insights on that.
Yeah, I just want to, unfortunately we have to go next minute here. But I really appreciate everyone for coming on, and please sign up for our newsletter. Follow us on LinkedIn. It's there on the screen. Oh, we just lost it. Can you go back just for one more minute here? I just want to say, what I like about Amazon, what they do is they ask a single question every day. Instead of a long survey every 6 months or every quarter, just one single question each day. I think that creates more faster information, faster feedback loops, helps people feel listened to, and then it's not a lot of overhead to complete.
Really, that's a great point. I didn't know they did that. But thank you everybody for joining, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We're always happy to help any way we can.
Yeah, schedule a call with us.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.